I am remaking the first dungeon from Zelda 1 in a hand-drawn art style. Why? I think that would look really cool. In this video, I will show you the journey of how I went from this to this, all the steps I took, and the decisions I made along the way. But first, hi, I'm Vasgay. I'm a 2D artist and animator, but I've always felt my true passion lies in video games, and I really just want to learn how to make my own games. With this project, I intend to take a small snippet from Zelda 1, the first dungeon, and try to reimagine it in a 2D animation-inspired art style, since that is the visual language and workflow I know best. I haven't seen too many top-down games that try to go for that style, and I know why, it's a lot of work. So let's give it a shot! Before we begin, I want to clarify why I am limiting my scope to just level 1. Even though it's a tiny section of the game, to have it fully playable, I'll still have to worry about character movement, map layout, graphics, combat, enemies, pickups, HUD, music, sound effects. You get the picture. That is quite a full plate already for a beginner developer such as myself, and I really want this project to look and feel as best as I can make it. I always found it best to think of large projects as just a bunch of tiny projects, so who knows, depending on how well this goes, I may continue working on it, but for now, let's just make level 1. The first thing I made for this project before having any sort of playable prototype was this mock-up illustration of the first screen. This was a pretty good first pass, but I ended up changing quite a few things on it, which I felt ended up being for the better. Here, for example, I drew Link with proportions closer to what he has in the original game, but I ended up changing it later because I just didn't like it very much. For this project, I'll be using the Godot game engine. I have tried to make a game before in the past, but that was for the NES, so imagine my shock when I found out that in Godot, sprites can have more than 3 colors. After messing around and watching a ton of YouTube tutorials, I ended up with this. I know, so cool. But from this I did learn how to make a playable character and how graphics and collision work in Godot. So, not a bad start. Next, I wanted to retire this green rectangle I had as my player character, so I went out to draw Link. I already have 2 shorts talking about how I made his idle and running animations, so here I'll talk about my redesign and how I put him in the game. When redesigning Link, I did take his Zelda 1 design as a base, but I also mixed and matched several other Link designs as well. There's some Wind Waker influence in the face, and even some Oracle Link in the overall hair shape. I did consider a Link to the Past pink hair at some point, but decided to drop that for a more conventional blonde hair color. Even though I was tempted not to, I insisted in animating Link in 8 directions instead of 4. Most resources for learning game development in Godot tend to focus on pixel art for graphics, and 4 directions work just fine for that, but I felt that for something with more high-fidelity graphics such as my project, it would look really jarring to have Link moving in only 4 directions. Luckily, Godot has these extremely convenient animation player and animation tree features, so implementing the animations into the characters is very simple. I just had to import my animation frames as PNG sequences with a transparent background, create a new animation for each direction and action, and set the proper timing on the animation player. Then, in the animation tree node, I can place the animations I made according to each direction inside of a blend space 2D node. Now I have a Link that can stand and run, so let's work on this background. In Zelda 1, dungeons are composed of several rooms that all have the exact same size and rectangular shape, so I used a simple prototype tile map to quickly build rooms and play around with layouts and scale based on my Link. After I settled on a layout I liked, I took a screenshot of my viewport and brought them into Krita to start sketching. One step of creation I don't see people talk about too much are their references and inspiration, so I thought I'd share some of mine here. Katsuya Terada's fantastic illustrations of A Link to the Past and Link's Awakening are beautiful, and they showcase Hyrule and Koholint at these fantastical, magical worlds, but with some real texture and grittiness to them that I feel was somewhat abandoned in future Zelda releases. I was also inspired by Meiko, an amazing illustrator who not only has made some fantastic Zelda fan art, he even illustrated the instruction manual pages from another Zelda 1 inspired game, Tunic, which you should totally play if you haven't yet. More broadly, I love this clear line art style, and I've been trying my hand at it for a long time now, so it was only natural I tried it for this game as well. I think it does a great job at portraying a colorful but detailed world, which to me is a perfect fit for Zelda. Okay, we are done with the drawing, so let's bring this room into the game and see how it looks. But there was a problem. I hated this layout. Okay, it's not that bad, but everything about it just felt off. I didn't like the color palette, the room felt too big, it just wasn't clicking. So I started over. The thing is, even when you fail, you're still making progress because now you know what doesn't work. So for me, I remembered that when I redid my layout and art. This experiment also taught me a lot about importing and using art assets in Godot, how to properly set up white sorting, and I even experimented with lighting a little bit. But we can do better, so let's give this another go. When I have a hard time with environments, I always turn to the old reliable, thumbnails. Thumbnails are when you draw a tiny version of whatever it is that you're trying to draw. It forces you to ignore details and focus on only what matters. In my case, because I already have a layout, those were my values and colors. Even though my art style isn't too worried about depth and 3D, I still wanted to convey the right mood and atmosphere for these dungeon rooms. For the first room, I wanted to have light coming from the bottom corner, like it's light coming from the outside through the entrance, so I did that through a simple point light 2D node. After that, I traced over the statue designs I did for my mockup and adapted their colors to better match my new room colors. Now we have the first room of the dungeon ready. But I was not yet finished. In Zelda 1, when you first enter the dungeon, you see a locked door in front of you and doorways on your left and your right. You're supposed to enter these rooms, fight the enemies inside, which will then each drop a key allowing you to unlock that door and move ahead. Or, you could just leave and re-enter the dungeon and for some reason that door will be unlocked. But let's forget about that for now. So now that I have a room template, I decided to put together this little 3-room hallway. A great way to make a game look just a bit more interesting is with post-processing effects. So the last thing I did was to experiment to see what Godot has to offer. Out of the box, it has the canvas modulate node, which I used to tint the entire screen with a dark, purplish color to better sell the darkness and mood of the dungeon. It worked great with my existing point light 2D nodes. I also added a world environment node, which allows me to mess with things like bloom and basic image adjustments such as brightness, contrast, and saturation. I also started experimenting with shaders and added a light blur to the screen to break the sharpness of the line work by just a little. I also made this neat little effect to fade in and fade out the room whenever you enter and exit them, as a way to add some extra mystery and anticipation when you enter a new room. Kind of like how in the original, the screen does a scroll to the next room. And with all that done, here is where I am now. I still have a lot of work to do ahead. A major element I still have to add to the game is, well, gameplay. But I'm pretty happy with what I managed to achieve for now. For my next steps, I want to work on combat and enemies and make sure that those feel good. This is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you could take something from it. Please remember to like and subscribe as this is just the beginning of my little hand-drawn Zelda project. Bye for now.